An investigation by The Intercept has shown the great profit-making that has taken place as a result of the war in Afghanistan. The investments from war outstripped regular investments from the same time period by 58%. And this shows that the profit-making from war is the greatest thing, the greatest profit-making that can be made under capitalism. $10,000 invested in the S&P 500 index fund on September 18, 2001 would be worth $61,613. $10,000 invested in military production on the same date would now be worth $97,295. The greatest winners were Boeing, Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, and General Dynamics. This is to say that for capitalism, war is the single most profitable endeavor that it can undertake. Now, this is very far from the belief that somehow capitalism is driven by people's wants and people's needs, and that the market will just fill them. Well, we kind of see something different. It goes towards what's profitable, not necessarily what's needed. If that was true, then world hunger wouldn't exist. What we see truly here is that capitalism is not what people, particularly the ruling class, would have you believe it is. Many argue that this is proof of victory in Afghanistan. Even the Intercept article claims so. They see war simply as something that earns money for weapons manufacturers. The situation is much more complicated than that. Capitalism does not go to war simply because it is profitable. It does it because it must do so. Capitalism is a system that is predicated on profit-making. That and nothing else. There is no other logic for capitalism to even function. Profit-making is the only way it can survive, which is why that's what it does over everything else. And there is a need to constantly expand. If there is no expansion, the system will fall into crisis. We generally see this as the falling rate of profit, or the tendency of the rate of profit to fall. This is the great paradox of capitalism. It must continually expand. It must infinitely grow in a world that is finite. This requirement of infinite growth, once it reaches the monopoly level, manifests as imperialism. The theory Lenin proposed was that once capitalism had reached a monopoly state domestically, it needed to reach beyond its own borders. Access to markets, lower cost resources, and labor are all a part of profitability. Specifically, maintaining a healthy rate of profit to stave off economic crisis. Primarily, Marx's theory of the tendency of the rate of profit to fall. Now, once a firm has completely saturated the market with a commodity or service, the only thing to do after that is to expand the market. Sell in areas where you did not sell before. And sometimes once you reach a monopoly stage inside of a country, you have to do it in another country. And one of the ways of doing that, primarily, is through force, and that being war. Now, when you get an entire class of people, the bourgeoisie, who also have that same interest, who also need to expand their market and gain access to cheaper and more abundant resources and labor, all of a sudden, the lobbying for war begins. Markets, surplus labor power, and natural resources are required by capitalists. This places them in contradiction with capitalists from other countries seeking the same. Lenin theorized that this is what gave rise to imperialism, and what he predicted would be the repeating cycles of world wars. The cause of both world wars was essentially the same: the need to expand beyond national borders. The death of the Archduke of Ferdinand was simply the ignition of the powder keg that was already the economic situation that was going on. Germany's military adventurism into other countries was driven by the same economic need. It's just that in that situation of World War II, what started off as Germany's expansion also began the expansion of several other countries at the same time. This is what turned World War II into a massive power grab of territory by primarily the imperialist powers in the world. This eventually brought about the death of the original colonialism and gave rise to neocolonialism, which what we call today imperialism. Today, we see a similar situation to the United States and other first world countries. Afghanistan was a prime ground for such expansion. Little development means there are great expansions to be made. The world capitalist powers are still competing for the same old reasons. The US, China, Russia, etc. are all still locked in an imperialist struggle. This is very far from the idea that we're given that we simply went to war because some greedy capitalists just wanted to make more money from weapons manufacturing. In truth, it was much more than that. This profit-making in terms of war is actually a byproduct of the actual need to expand markets, access to resources, labor, etc. So what they see as the primary drive of war is merely just a byproduct. Capitalism doesn't go to war because some greedy capitalist says that, oh, we should go to war so I can make money. The weapons manufacturers. The system as a whole needs it. It is not some crooked capitalist. It's the very nature of the system itself and its own necessity for the great inhumanities that are the unending wars, whether they be world wars or the war on terrorism. A war that's never meant to be won and will go on indefinitely. It also explains why Canada has been so adamant and so gung-ho about being a part of the US's war inside Afghanistan when we, historically have not gone along unless it was a world war. Because Canadian mining companies want a slice of the 3 trillion, an estimated 3 trillion rare earth minerals that are in the soil of Afghanistan. And Canadian mining companies internationally have a very bad reputation for being human rights abusers and willing to take land at all costs, including having indigenous activists killed. So we understand that this is not the action of some greedy capitalist who just wants money. This is the very system itself, that it has no choice but to do this. It's not going to have a friendly face. It's not going to be a good one with someone like AOC in charge. This is what capitalism is, and this is what capitalism will always do. Thank you for watching. If you like this program, then please head over to my Patreon page and set up a monthly donation. It's your donations that keep this program running. Also, if you would like, please rate, comment, subscribe, and share in various social media.